Hi, I wanted a little bit of silence so I can insert some introductory music. I'm just learning how to do this, how to make videos, and so I'll get better as I go. Hopefully I'll learn how to speak better, or speak well. Anyway, I said I would speak about the serpent who had seduced Eve to eat of the apple. Okay, and I've been thinking about that, because what I did say to you was I was looking at a Cat Williams video, a video he was being interviewed in on YouTube, and he spoke about Adam and Eve being brother and sister, children of God, having sex, and that sex was the original sin. The place where we can say sin and goodness began. Okay? Goodness had always existed, and then sin was introduced into perfection. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the serpent. So who is the serpent? So the Bible tells us Satan is the serpent. And that's important, I think. Because we're taught in Christianity that God became man so that man could know God, and that we are created in the image of God, which essentially means that God's creation are created in his image, which means Satan and the angels, and Satan is a fallen angel. So he too must have been created in God's image, which cannot be good. He may not like looking at himself. But it means that that's who we are. My battery just died. Just as I said that, the light went out. Satan has arrived on the scene. But and maybe that's God telling me no, he is not created in his image. But anyhow, I wanted to talk about the serpent. But before I did that, I wanted to address Eve and her identity. So if we are created in the image of God, then it's fair to say that Adam and Eve may at one time have been children. And so they were born and raised like we were born and raised. And so as they approach the teenage years of their life, then they will have these changes in their body just like we did when we were teenagers. And our sexuality begins to come to life. Now, we are also taught that to choose the world is to choose the pleasures of the world over our relationship with God. So when we choose our hedonistic pleasures like tasty food and sexual encounters, then we are choosing this before we are choosing our spiritual relationship with God. So I was thinking, well then maybe the serpent is maybe, I just turned the light back on. I'm not sure if it's too bright. The serpent may be Eve's ego, or her struggle with her oncoming sexuality as a young teenage girl. And maybe her first pleasures and eating of the apple was actually discovering herself, her body as a sexual, or herself as a sexual being. And having done that, then introduced that to Adam. And that's what it means to have eaten the apple, to have submitted to physical pleasure over the relationship of perfection and purity with God. So, and the light went out again there. So maybe I'm wrong, but that's okay, because I'm not trying to be right, and that's important. I'm definitely not trying to be right. I just want to investigate this based on the many videos I've watched of people who are a lot smarter than I am, who speak about it. But what I'm just trying to do is to get to a place where I can use original sin as a foundation for you and I to separate ourselves from narcissists who do not care about sin. Sin is just a way for them to hurt you and I so that they can have pleasure out of our suffering. So I was thinking about that. And then I was also thinking, because I wanted Eve to be raised up as somebody who is possibly the most incredibly special human being that ever lived. And what I mean by that is, if Adam and Eve's arrival at their sexuality was something that could not be avoided, then God knew what he was doing. He knew that he had introduced Adam and Eve as husband and wife, that they would become exactly who they became, that they would submit to their sexuality, and that they would eventually have sex, and that in doing this they would break in some way their innocent connection to God and enter into a world that he had created for the purpose of experiencing along with their body. And I'm just trying to hide this sign. I don't want it to be on the video. And therefore, Eve was chosen not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to be the first one to make this move. And so Eve, under no circumstances, was somebody who had submitted to sin. Instead, she was chosen for her strength to initiate the sexual encounter with Adam so that the human race could begin. And that God had chosen Eve and created Eve for this very thing. And he had created her. Adam was created from the earth, and Eve was created from Adam's perfect creation. But she had the strength to be chosen to be the one who would create a set of circumstances in which her first sexual encounter would take place with Adam, and the human race would begin. So I hope I've corrected anything that might have suggested Eve was of sin, and that the original sin, i.e. the loss of innocence by having sex together between Adam and Eve, was something that came about as a result of their emerging sexuality as young people. And doing that, they would then go on to have children, Cain and Abel. And the story of Cain and Abel would possibly be the first place that real sin had begun, when Cain murdered his own brother. And the reason why I say that is, while I was studying and trying to learn about narcissism, so I could understand what it was I had gone through in my life, I discovered that a lot of psychologists online would always be forced by their understanding to eventually seek out what it means to be a spiritual being. And in doing that, they had, excuse me, I just finished my dinner. So in doing that, they would be forced to do what I'm doing in these videos, which is to go back to original sin. And in searching back and taking that look they would come to understand what it means to describe an individual as having the blood of Cain or the blood of Abel. Abel being the good child who had suffered under the hands of his narcissistic brother's deeds, which of course meant he would be murdered by his brother. His own blood would murder him. And to have the blood of Cain would mean that you would have the blood of sin in you. And then we come to understand that we have free will. God gave us free will. So choosing sin is what Cain did. And choosing goodness is what Abel did. And that's important too, because narcissists choose sin. And you and I who want to heal from the terrible experience of narcissists, we choose goodness. And we do it knowing we're not perfect. So I will sum it up at that. And I hope that works out. And I hope that makes sense. And what I want to talk about next, I think, is what a thought is. What does it mean when a thought happens in our head? And how does that relate to original sin? And why is sin bad anyhow? What does it mean when sin is bad? So those are the things I hope to speak about next time. Thank you for watching. Be great. Make sure that you find your joy. And when you remove narcissists, you can't help but for that to happen. And for the abundance of God's Spirit and His love and His healing to find its way to you in your life. And it will. So be amazing, be great. Thank you for watching. Namaste. Bye-bye. And be sure to check out the links I've included in the bottom of the video. What I mean by that is the people who have helped me to heal. I want to introduce you to them. So thank you. See you again. 10 seconds for my music.
It come to shine on you and me. It come to set our spirit free and bring us home some sweet home love.